Greetings, this is Robert Messina, and we're up to chapter 10. I'm simply going to read chapter 10, only 3 verses, so that I get chapter 10 out of the way. It's not like it's nothing, it's a conclusion of the whole matter. So let me read it first, and then I'll explain to you what I'm going to do the rest of the video. Okay, Esther chapter 10, verse 1. And the king Ahasuerus laid a tribute upon the land and upon the isles of the sea. A tribute, it means that he's taxing. He's expanded. He went all the way to the sea, the Mediterranean. That's the Mediterranean Sea. His empire gained. And then verse 2. And all the acts of the power and his might, and the declaration of the greatness of Mordecai, whereinto the king advanced him, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia? So they're written in the books, a common theme of Esther, referring to the books in case you want to know more about the history of what went on, because it's almost hard to believe when people say what went on. Verse 3, for Mordecai the Jew was next to the king Ahasuerus, and great among the Jews, and accepted the multitude of his brethren, seeking the wealth of his people, and speaking peace to all his seed. Now right there, that reminds me of Joseph. Joseph was of the 12 tribes of Israel, one of his 12 sons, and he sat at the right hand of the Pharaoh, and he was great in Egypt, and he was great among his people that multiplied while he was there and after he died. And Joseph, it just points to verse 3 there. And Mordecai was like him in that sense, that he's seated in the right hand of power of the king. All right, so now that we have that out of the way, let me tell you what I thought of, a plan, what I gained out of the hidden treasures that were in Book of Esther. Hidden treasures in different repeated verses for no reason to repeat it. Repeating names, no reason to repeat the names. Having ALEF and TAVs before a phrase, before a verse, making you think about what just went on. And it always brought me to some area in the Bible. And I realized that most of the areas that it was bringing me to was revealing to me the heart of God himself. He was revealing through this book, it doesn't even have his name on it, but he was the one who authored it without the name, and it's got lots of names in there that represent lots of major prophets like Elijah, like John the Baptist, like Moses, like Joseph, as we said, like Esther, like Vashti before Esther, and just the evil part with Haman and his wife, representing the Antichrist, the man, and representing mystery woman Babylon, the great whore that has to be judged for the killing of the prophets. And it came out of Haman's wife, the words came out of Haman's wife to create the 50-foot gallows for Mordecai. So she was a partner to the enemy Satan, and she's always been like that She had that partnership ever since the beginning, and we're gonna touch on that a little bit. But I divided it up to 14. I call them milestones. Milestones where God revealing milestones of letting Him know more about us from the very beginning to Eden, and I call that the shame cover and the Eve-Satan wrestle, war that began then. And then the next one would be giants, where the sons of God saw the daughters of men, and they came unto them and had children with them, and they were men of renown. God saw that wickedness was multiplying in the earth, and the thought of man was wicked without ceasing. And so he disposed of them with the flood, and that's the second milestone. But it repented him that he made man. That's the thing that got me on that. Now, the next milestone would be seeing the Father's nakedness. And that happened when Noah, after the flood, he got drunk, and Ham went into the tent and saw his father's nakedness. A son was born to Ham, and his name was Canaan. And that's what happened. We'll get to each of these milestones. I'm just going to mention them now so you have them in mind. The next milestone would be the mighty Nimrod, who I call the anti-God. He was mighty against the Lord, and the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. That's another major milestone. Evil is entered and has begun. Anti-God, Antichrist has begun. That battle began right close to the beginning, right after the flood. Then we have the promise to Abram, and a covenant is made then, and that's the promise that he has, where his descendants will be as more than the stars in the sky. The next one is when Joseph has two dreams, and those dreams are prophecies that that his brothers will bow down to him, and he's sold into Egypt, and there's a covenant made with Abram by God. Keep his promise. God is going to keep his promise to Abram. So then Joseph goes into Egypt, and there's bondage. The people cry out to God, and God hears them, and he remembers his covenant, and he sends Moses to let his people go. That ends in the Passover, a new beginning for Israel. Okay, the eighth milestone is when people of Israel need to cross Jordan, and they send out spies, and there's different apostasies where the people saw the works of God, but they couldn't believe that they were still going to be able to conquer them, even regardless of what they saw with their own eyes. God was very annoyed with them at that point. But he allowed the 40 years to wander in the wilderness, and they wandered for 40 years, and when they were all dead and 40 years were over, he set his people so that they would be able to pass over the Jordan River in the same manner that they crossed over the Red Sea. The waters dried up, and they walked across in dry land. And then once they got into Jordan, they had to overcome 10 nations that were inhabiting the Promised Land. Canaan is the chief nation, and his name means merchant, and he's going to be represented in the Prince of Tyre, and he's also going to be the curse of Canaan. That's that. And then we have Samuel, David, and Solomon. Times of peace with David and Solomon were 70 years, 30 from David and 40 from Solomon. So 70 years. All the nations were one people. There wasn't a division into Samaria and Jerusalem like there was right after Solomon. That led to the exile of Samaria, where they lost their identity. Right after that, it led to the exile of Jerusalem, taken captive by Babylon. The next great thing is the decree of Cyrus. He was a Mede, by the way, from Mede, Persia, and he ordered the Jews to return to their Jerusalem and rebuild their city, and they did, and that's in the Daniel chapter 7, the 70 weeks. So Jesus in the land is, and John the Baptist, they're baptizing with water baptism and the spirit baptisms, and a lot of believers in Jesus, and a lot of people of Israel and Gentiles coming to faith and believe in the one who was sent, Jesus, their Savior. And right around this time, almost the same time, you could say, well, while it's all happening, Satan gets kicked out of heaven, and that's another milestone, because it ends the time that he was in heaven walking up and down like he was in Job, to the time he was kicked out, where he realized he doesn't have much time left, and with that little bit of time he has left, he persecutes Israel, and he persecutes those that believe, those that have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Then the final milestone would be the 7 years of tribulation, which is actually a good thing for us. It's a cleansing. It's the bride is making herself ready. We're getting Torah polished, I would say, and we become closer and closer during that time, because we don't want to lose faith. We want to keep our faith. We want to hang on and stand until the end. And the end of that 7 years, at the sound of the last trumpet, Jesus is with us. Okay? So now I'm going to just go ahead and start reading what I have prepared for you guys. The first milestone begins in Eden, and that's the shame cover and the Eve-Satan battle began. Ezekiel 28, 2-3, Son of man, say unto the Prince of Tyrus, Thus saith the Lord God, because thine heart is lifted up, and thou hast said, I am God. I sit in the seat of God, in the midst of the seas. Yet thou art a man, and not God. Though thou set thine heart as the heart of God, behold, thou art wiser than Daniel. There is no secret they can hide from thee. 28, 13-16. Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering, the sardi, topaz, diamond or emerald, the beryl, the onyx, the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, and a greenstone, and the carbuncle and gold. All right. So he's got 9 precious gemstones. He's missing 3. that go onto the high priest's breastplate that represents 12 tribes of Israel. The workmanship of thy tabrets and thy pipes were prepared in the day thou wast created. So he's created, you see that. Thou art the anointed cherub that covers. In the way, Satan covers in the sense that he calls evil, good evil, and he calls evil good. So he twists things around, and that's the way I see that he covers up sin by not calling it sin. And I have set thee so. In other words, God himself is allowing him to be who he is. Thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day thou wast created, until iniquity was found in thee. And that happened when he was caught deceiving Eve. By the multitude of thy merchandise have they filled the midst of thee with violence, and thou hast sinned. Therefore I will cast thee as profane out of the mountain of God, and I will destroy thee, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. He gets cast out in the great battle of heaven, and we'll get to that. That's another milestone. But I want to talk about this. He's walking up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Now, how do we get that? And the best place to see that would be in the book of Job. Okay, and Job lived before Moses, at the time when the people of Israel were in Egypt. Job knew a lot because of the prophecies of Enoch that were in the stars. But let's just read Job 6 through 8. Now there was a day when the sons of God, these are the angels now, the good angels or the bad angels, or however they are, came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. And the Lord said unto Satan, Whence comes thou? And then Satan answered the Lord and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and walking up and down in it. And the Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job? And here's where the burning coals come in. In other words, Satan is walking around finding those that he can accuse. That's what he does. He finds sin and he accuses men of sin. That's what he does. He's the devil. And these burning coals would be found in any man that caused a woman to commit adultery, even through lust, where the woman's husband that a man made adultery advances to, he got a burning coal in his heart. So one of the things Satan was doing was walking up and down through the burning coals. It wasn't that he was stepping on burning coals. He was looking for burning coals within the hearts of men. And that's my take. And then anyway, we're looking at Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and an upright man, one that fears God and eschews evil. And actually, Job does mention, if I had looked at another woman, then let my wife be grinded upon by another man. See, that's so Job is even saying, you can't find any lust, adultery, iniquity in me, is what he was saying there. Okay, then so let's go to Revelation 18:21 through 24. Now, again, Mystery Woman Babylon is a partner with Satan, where Satan tells the woman to lie, and Mystery Woman Babylon comes and tries to make that fruit look more appealing. Alright? So she's involved the whole time with sin upon the earth. 21 through 24. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone, and cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall that great city Babylon, now that's desires of this world, be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. And the voices of harpers and musicians and pipers and trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in thee. And no craftsman of whatsoever craft he be shall be found any more in thee. And the sound of the millstone shall be heard no more at all in thee. And the light of the candle shall shine no more at all in thee. And the voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, and by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. And in her were found the blood of the prophets, and of the saints, and of all that were slain upon the earth. Okay, now, there was a time when there were giants, and Genesis 6, 2 through 6, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives, all of which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh. Now yet his days shall be 120 years, like the years Moses lived. And there were giants in the earth in those days. Also after those days. Okay? You just keep that in mind. There were giants in those days and also after those days, after the flood. And that's where Nimrod's going to come in. When the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, those men that were born, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of thoughts of his heart was evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. This is a major time when the Lord is letting us know about his heart and about how he feels about man and about how he feels about man sinning against him. So he causes the flood and everything. When the flood is over, in Genesis 9, 15 through 17, he says to man, And I will remember my covenant which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it, that I may remember an everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, This is the token of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is upon the earth. So did you notice that I have, after the bold, I have the colors of the rainbow there? And did you also notice I picked a magnificent view of 2 rainbows? And that happens. And every time you see a rainbow, you can remember him. Alright, now the next milestone let me know it bothered him very much. seeing your father's nakedness. All right, and this happened right after the flood. Genesis 9:20 through 22. And Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine and was drunken. And he drank of the wine and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brothers without. Okay? Those two brothers were the same age as him. Alright, so you know the story that Canaan inhabits the promised land, and when the wickedness, the 10 nations that live in the promised land, when their wickedness comes up to the neck of God, where he had enough, he now wants the people of Israel to go into the promised land and to take over and to have vengeance upon all of those 10 nations. This is something I saw every now and then, but I was wondering, because there were 10 and Haman had 10 sons, and each of those sons had an Aleph and a Tav next to him, and there was a lot of weight that they carried, in the sense that they had to be killed first and hung on the gallows as well, and they also had to have a name of every one of those sons with an Aleph and a Tav. And then I looked and I saw that every one of the nations of the promised land that had to be killed by Israel, had to be judged and killed by Israel and wiped out, were names that had an Aleph and a Tav in front of each and every one of those 10 nations. Genesis 15:19 through 21, there's 3 verses that have 10 names. All I could do with that is to translate them to see if they match anything. And number 1, there's going to be 10 horns with 10 crowns on the tail of the dragon and also the beast of Revelation, and they're going to be 10 kings. Nobody knows what are the names of those 10 kings yet, but those names are going to come out pretty soon. They're going to come out pretty soon, but right now nobody knows what they are. They represent 10 trade regions throughout the earth. Okay, the earth is now separated into 10 trade regions, and even that hasn't come to pass yet, where we recognize the trade regions. But it's going to be where once it begins, you're not going to be able to trade from where you used to be able to trade. Only within the trade region can you trade. That's what I think. That's what I think it's going to be. I was able to look up what the names translate to. And what I did was match it up with a verse in Esther. So, for example, the Kenites, the translation for them was a smith, and a smith has his livelihood using his hands. All right? And that would parallel with chapter 3, verse 10, where the king took his ring off his hand and it had an Aleph and a Tav in front of that. Next to that was also the Kenizzites. Now they make their livelihood with arms, with strengths. They join an army. They're troopers. They fight. They have weapons. Okay? And that would be a verse where it says, they sought to lay hand on the king. When the two gatekeepers wanted to kill the king. All right, that's where that is. And you have the Cadmonites. Now, the Cadmonites, their translation is east, and it's also behind is the way to the water. In other words, they're looking east, and behind is the Mediterranean Sea, going west. All right, so that would be in the last chapter. The first verse mentions the isle in the sea that was paying tribute to the king. Okay, let's go to the Hittites. The Hittites, they don't really have an explanation or anything like that. So whenever that happens, what I do is I take the letters themselves, and the letters themselves have meanings. In this case, the Hittites would be Chet, which is the 8th letter. What that means is a covering. So, and then the Tav is a far out marker or a mark. A mark or a marker could be the cross too, because it looks like a cross. And there are different other things, but to me, it's a mark that protects or covers. All right, now chapter 10, verse 8, they covered Haman's face. When Haman was condemned to die, they covered his face with a napkin, I think. The Perizzites, that means belong to an unwalled village. That hits directly to chapter 9, verse 9, where it talks about Jews of villages that dwelled in unwalled towns. That fits exactly. There are so many words that are written in the verses that will tend to bring you to these areas that I'm talking about. In this case, the 10 wicked nations that inhabited the land of Canaan. Now, Rephaim means to mend. It also means giants. The people of Israel had a great healing in chapter 9, verse 22, when their sorrow turned to joy and their mourning turned into a good day. All right, so that's matched. The Amorites means a sayer, or somebody that has a decree. Let's take chapter 3, verse 8, talking about the king's laws. And in this case, the same exact root word is Yomer. An Amorite is a Yomer, and he's a sayer, and that's an exact match. Canaanites themselves, these are the children of Canaan, born from that sin of nakedness, seeing the father's nakedness again. That translates to be zealous and also a merchant. Now, Canaan inhabited both the eastern side by the Jordan, and he also inhabited the western side by the Mediterranean Sea. Maybe that's why he is the sort of like ruler of the land, because he has the two positions, and all trade throughout the land was mostly done through him, the merchant. And the merchants are those that cry for Mystery Woman Babylon. And we'll get to that. The Girgashites, they dwell on clay soil is what I got. And now it pointed me to chapter 8, verse 14, where it says that the posts rode on mules and camels went out. The posts rode on mules and camels went out. So the camels are heavily in there because there's two gamels. There's a resh, there's a head between two camels, as if you could see the head riding on you could see the man riding on the camels with the delivery, which is the postman is going to be giving all of the people of Israel, or all the people of the provinces to kill Israel. Both ways. It happened both ways in this book of this Esther. Okay, now let's go to the Jebusites. That means that they step on or trample the way a warrior would do that. Not stepping on ants, stepping on people, stepping on goods, stepping on lots of different things that are cherished by people. So the Jebusites, and that's chapter 6, verse 13. Zeresh, the wife of Haman, is telling her husband, if what I hear is true, the Jews, before thou fell, thou shalt not prevail. She's already got Haman as a dead man right there in that verse. So she's giving up on him, and she doesn't see him living, and she was right. She was right about that. Now we're going to see more about the Jebusites later on. Now, the next milestone would be the mighty Nimrod, who I say is anti-God, and he has the beginning of his cities is Babel, and it's the land of Shinar. Now let's read that. Genesis 10, verse 7. And the sons of Cush, which are Sheba, and Havilah, and Sabta, and Ra'amah, and Sabteka. Now, what I want you to notice now, the name Nimrod is not mentioned. These are the sons of Cush, and they do not mention Nimrod. Genesis 10:8 says, and Cush begat Nimrod. So how do you work that out? How do you they just gave us the names and Nimrod is not there. He is there in the sense that if you take a daughter of Cush and a son of God sees the daughter of Cush and likes her and has a child, and they name the child Nimrod, and he's a mighty hunter against the Lord, and he is going to be a mighty hunter before the Lord, or against the Lord, or anti-Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. So that's where it is. That's where Babel started, and that is a project by all 70 nations together as one, building this ridiculous city that goes up into the clouds, so that a man can stand up at the top of that and declare himself God. They had to stop building. They had to be dispersed. They couldn't build anymore because they couldn't understand one another. But they had different signs, and they were able. And right now, you can communicate through your phone now. A lot of people in the world speak English, and that's another way, just speaking English. Let's go to the promise, Abram's promise, and the covenant God makes with him. Genesis 15:5-7. And the Lord brought Abram forth abroad and said, look now toward heaven, and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, so shall thy seed be. Abraham doesn't even, he doesn't even have a son yet, and his old age already, but he believed the Lord. And that belief was what was counted to him for righteousness. Wasn't anything that he did, but he believed. And by grace are you saved through faith, not of works. But Abraham is going to show his works because he's going to show his obedience. We all know that story where the angel tells him to stop. Okay, and he said unto him, I am the Lord that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees. He was called out of Babylon, to give thee this land to inherit it, which is the promised land. And we all have to be called out of Babylon, which is the world. We have to be in the world, but not of the world. All right, now keep going. Genesis 14, 18 through 20. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine. And he was the priest of the Most High God. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. And he blessed the Most High God, which has delivered thine enemies into thy hand. And then it says, and Abram gave him tithes of all. But Abraham does not touch the spoil, by the way. He gives the Melchizedek a tenth of what was his, but he doesn't touch the spoil, and that's going to come up in chapter 14, verse 21 and 22. And the king of Sodom said unto Abram, Give me the persons, and take the goods to thyself. Now Abraham answers him, I, Abram, will not take a thread even to the shoe lasher, and that I will not take anything that is thine, lest thou should say, I have made Abram rich. All right, so he doesn't touch the spoil, which seems to be something that was repeated and repeated and repeated in the book of Esther. So now we continue with the promise from God to Abraham. He makes a covenant. Genesis 15:13. And God said to Abram, Know for sure thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve the Egyptians that will afflict them 400 years. And it shall come to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the selfsame day it came to pass, which is the 14th of Nisan, that all the hosts of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. Now let's go to 17 to 18, still chapter 15. And it came to pass, which was the 14th Nisan, when the sun went down, and it was dark, and a smoking furnace and a burning lamp passed between the sacrifice pieces. Now in that same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, Unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. And this I say, that the covenant which that was confirmed before. Now this is Paul talking now. This is Galatians 3:17. And this I say, that the covenant that was confirmed before of God in Christ before the law, which was 430 years after that, it cannot disannul that it should make the promise of none effect. So the promise is made 430 years before you get the law. Now there can't be anything in the law that takes away the promise. Because once God promises something, he promises it. You're going to get it. It's there. It's going to be yours. It's already promised. Now, what is the covenant the lawful covenant of Moses? What is that? It's telling us how to live, how to be lawful, what to do and what not to do. And it's a good thing. But the law of Melchizedek is greater. And that, I'm going to say that, and that's said already a bunch of times by me in the book of Esther here. Okay, now let's go to Joseph. Now Joseph is sold to Egypt, first of all. Let's go there. Genesis 37, 26 through 28. And Judah said to his brethren, "What profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood?" They wanted to kill him and put him in the pit and throw him in the grave. That's what they wanted to do. So he says, how is that going to do us any benefit? Why do we have to do that? Why don't let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him. For he is our brother and our flesh, and his brethren were content with that. So, God bless Judah. He's the one who helped save his brother Joseph. And his brethren, okay, then there passed by Midianite merchants, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit. And they sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And they brought Joseph into Egypt. There's another payment for a child of Israel. Payment where he's sold. In this case, at least his life is being spared, and that's a good thing. It turns out to be a good thing. What they made of evil, God made of good. Okay, now, chapter 37, verse 34 and 35. Now the father gets the news that his son Joseph is dead. He's not, and he gets the news that he is. So when he gets that news, Jacob rent his clothes and put sackcloth upon his loins, and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said, "For I will go down into the grave unto my son mourning." And thus his father wept for him. Now, when I see renting your clothes, I see the curtain the temple curtain being rent in two, and the father hears the news that his son is dead. And in the real case, his son is dead. His son is dead, and he's put into the belly of the whale, and he's going to be there 3 days and 3 nights. And in the meantime, there's sackcloth and ashes on the father in heaven, and there's sackcloth and ashes on Mordecai when he hears the news, and there's sackcloth and ashes, the 2 witnesses, for 42 months. All right, now let's go over to 43, Genesis 43, 27 through 30. This is Joseph, Egypt bondage. And Joseph asked his brothers of their welfare, and he said, "Is your father well? The old man of whom you spoke, is he yet alive?" And they answered, "Thy servant, our father, is in good health. He is yet alive. And they bowed down their heads and made obedience. And made obeisance to two dreams that Joseph had come to pass right there. They got fulfilled right there. All right. And Joseph lifts up his eyes, and he saw his brother Benjamin of his mother, and said, "Is this your younger brother, of whom ye spoke unto me?" Because don't forget, he never saw him yet. And he said, "God be gracious unto thee, my son." And he speaks to him. Speaks to his brother. And that's what he said to him, the first thing. "God be gracious unto thee, my son." And then, this is such a heartwarming moment. Joseph can't take it, he can't contain it. Joseph made haste, for his bowels did yearn upon his brother. And he sought where to weep. And he entered into the chamber, and he wept there. You see how the hearts of God, the heart of God was being displayed by Joseph right there. Exodus chapter 1, verse 7 to 8. "And the children of Israel were fruitful, and increased abundantly, and multiplied, and waxed exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them. And now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not." Joseph, 11 through 13. "Therefore they set over them taskmasters to afflict with burdens. And they built Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. And Egyptians grieved because of the children of Israel. And they made the children of Israel serve with rigor." 20 to 22. "Therefore God dealt with the midwives, and the people multiplied and waxed very mighty. And because the midwives feared God, he made them houses." God made them houses to live in as a reward for fearing God and still allowing Israel to have their children as they were in the past. Even though Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, "Every son that is born you shall cast into the river, and every daughter you shall save alive." So this way they can have power over the women and power over the children, but they don't want to have to fight the sons of Israel, the men of Israel. So that was their plan. It didn't work. Exodus 2, verse 10. And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son, and she called him Moses. And she said, "Because I drew him out of the water." That she there, that's got to be Hatshepsut, the daughter of the Pharaoh. Moses is now born, and he's being taken care of in royalty. He could have had the life of a Pharaoh, and he rejected it to help God redeem Israel in a great salvation. Okay, now, when he was about 40 years old, Moses, he now realizes what his calling is, and his calling is going to be the voice given to the people and to Pharaoh to let his people go. He knew that calling right now at this time. So he goes out, knowing this. He goes out and he sees a wrestle, and one of them is a Egyptian, and the other one's a Hebrew, and he sides with the Hebrew, and he kills the Egyptian. Then the next day, and when he went out the second day, behold, two Hebrews strove together. And Moses said to him that did the wrong, wherefore smitest thou brother? In other words, he's doing a correction. He's not killing anybody. He's just correcting the guy who was wrong. And that guy turns around and says, who made thee prince and judge over us? Intendest thou to kill me as thou killed the Egyptian? And Moses feared and said, surely this thing is known. So he flees. Exodus 2:23 and 24. And it came to pass in the process of time that the king of Egypt died, and the children of Israel sighed by reason of the bondage, and they cried. And their cry came up into God by reason of the bondage. And God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. So you see, God is remembering his covenant. He has that covenant with the forefathers. He's going to keep that covenant. He's not going to let it go to the wayside. He's going to honor his words in his covenant. And he's going to save them. So let's go over to, now we see the burning bush. We have the Exodus, and we have the Passover. Exodus 3:2-7. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto Moses in a flame of fire out of the midst of the bush. And Moses looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burnt. And when the Lord saw that he turned aside, God called out unto Moses from the midst of the bush, and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here am I. And God said, Draw not nigh hither, and put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place where thou standest is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people, which are in Egypt, and heard their cry, by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. Chapter 3, verse 12-14. And he said, God said, Certainly I will be with thee, and this shall be the token unto thee, that I have sent thee. When thou hast brought forth the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God upon this mountain. And Moses said unto God, Behold, when I come unto the children of Israel, and shall say unto them, The God of your fathers has sent me unto you. And they say to me, What is his name? What shall I say unto them? And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, Thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am has sent me unto you. So you see, there's one I am talking, and he's pointing to another I am that's next to him. And he's saying, I am that I am. I'm the same as that I am. And who shall tell them that I am sent you? Only one. So it goes from two I ams to one I am. And I see that as two sitting next to the same throne, next to each other on the same throne. Okay, now let's go to chapter 12, 2-7. This is now they had already passed over the Red Sea, and God is giving instructions now about the Passover. First thing he says to him, this month, which is Nisan, shall be unto you the beginning of months. Now, up until this time, the first of the year was Tishri, and that's now the 7th month. So the first of the year became Nisan, which was to be the last month, and the 7th month now becomes the beginning of the year for all of the other nations, as it always was, but to Israel it's the 7th month. That has to do a lot with the reason why Jesus asked Nicodemus, how can you be a teacher of Israel and not know what it is to be born again? Because right there, it's given us a new birthday for people of Israel. They're getting a new birthday right here. Born again. And they're going to go over the Red Sea, and they're going to go over the Jordan. One is the promised land, that's the baptism of the Spirit, and the other one is the cleansing and with water, which is the repentance of sins. All right? So continue on in there. It says, it shall be, this month, Nisan, shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of Nisan, they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next to his house take it according to the number of the souls. So every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it 4 days up until the 14th day of the same month. The congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening, which is the Last Supper time. The death of Jesus is confirmed when Judas was paid the 30 pieces of silver. So in other words, as soon as he was paid, it was as if Jesus was already dead. The beginning of the night is the beginning of the 9th day of the 14th. So the 14th during the day is when he got crucified. All of that food they shall kill it in the evening. And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the 2 side posts and on the upper doorposts of the houses, wherein they shall eat it. Now, the angel of death hops over the house when he sees the blood. Okay, let's go to the bush burning Exodus Passover and Exodus 17, 8, and 14. Then came Amalek and fought with Israel and Rephiah them. Rephiah them was on the eastern side of Jordan. And Moses said unto Joshua, choose us out men and go out, fight with Amalek tomorrow. And Moses said unto Joshua, choose us out men and go out, fight with Amalek tomorrow. I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand. And so Joshua did as Moses had said to him, and fought with Amalek. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up on the top of the hill. And it came to pass, when Moses held up his hand, that Israel prevailed. And when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. And Joshua discomfited Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. And the Lord said unto Moses, write this for a memorial in a book, and rehearse it in the ears of Joshua, for I will utterly put out remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. Okay, Paul talks about this in the book of Hebrews, talking about this evil heart of unbelief from 10 spies. So Hebrews 3, verses 12 through 17. Take heed, brethren, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief. This is apostasy. In other words, you were a believer, and now you're not a believer. You were in the world, and you came out of the world, and then you went back into the world. Okay, this is an evil heart of unbelief, and you can't do that. And it's when Jesus comes back, it's going to be one of the beginnings things that he says, that false Christ will lead many, and many will fall away. That's apostasy. It's no good. We have to fight. We have to stand. We can't be defeated. We can't be defeated where we give up. We can't give up. The only way we can give up is give up to die. That's it. If you want to give up, you give up to die. That's it. All right? Other than that, you have the whole armor of God with a helmet of salvation, knowing that if you are going to get a fatal blow, you're going to win. Okay? But exhort one another while it is called day, lest any of you be hardened through deceitfulness of sin. For we are made partakers of Christ if we hold the beginning of our confidence steadfast unto the end. While it is said, today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts, as in the provocation. For some, when they had heard, did provoke, howbeit not all of them came out of Egypt by Moses, but with whom he was grieved 40 years. Was it not those that had sinned, those whose carcasses fell in the wilderness? And to whom sware he that they should not enter his rest, but to them that believe not? So we see, they could not enter in because of their unbelief. God is merciful, so that's why you have to keep on believing him. You saw what he has done, like David saw what he did with the lion and with the bear. He's going to do that with this uncircumcised Philistine. They saw the miracles of them walking through the Red Sea. Why couldn't they walk through the Jordan? And they did. Numbers 13:27 through 33. And this is the 10 spies again that lacked faith. And they said, we came into the land whither thou hast sent us, and surely it flows with milk and honey. And they showed the fruit of it. Nevertheless, the people be strong that dwell in the land, and the cities are walled and very great. So the people that dwell in the land are strong. The cities are walled and very great. And moreover, we saw the children of Anak, which are the giants. And Amalekites dwell in the land of the south. And the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites dwell in the mountains. And the Canaanites dwell by the sea and the coast of Jordan. And Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said, let us come up at once and possess it, for we are able to overcome it. See, so we have a voice of faith coming out of the 12 spies. But the men that went up with him said, we be not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. And they brought an evil report of the land, which they searched unto the children of Israel, saying, the land through which we have gone to search is a land that eats up inhabitants, and all the people that we saw in it are men of great stature. And there we saw giants, sons of Anak, which come of the giants. And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, so we were in their sight. So let's go to Joshua 4, 18 through 24. And it came to pass, when the priests that bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord were come up out of the midst of the Jordan, and the soles of the priests' feet were lifted up onto the dry land, the waters of the Jordan returned unto their place, and flowed over all his banks, as they did before. And they came up out of the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month, and they camped in Gilgal, in the east border of Jericho. And those 12 stones which they took out of the Jordan, Joshua pitched in Gilgal. And spake unto the children of Israel, saying, When your children shall ask their fathers in time to come, saying, What means these stones? Then you shall let your children know, saying, Israel came over this Jordan on dry land, for the Lord your God dried up the waters of Jordan from before you, until you were passed over. And as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea, from which he dried up from before us, until we were gone over, that all the people of the earth might know the hand of the Lord that is mighty, that you might fear the Lord your God forever. Okay, let's go over to Samuel, David, and Solomon's time. This is a time of peace, a time of obedience, 70 years of peace between David and Solomon. 1 Samuel 15, 20, 22. Now this is the end of Saul now talking. And Saul said to Samuel, Yea, Saul is now replying to Samuel. Yea, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord, and have gone the way of the Lord sent me, and have brought Agag, king of Amalek, and have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. But the people took of the spoil, sheep and oxen, and chief things which they should have been utterly destroyed, to sacrifice unto the Lord thy God in Gilgal. And Samuel said, Hath the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. For rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. Because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected thee from being king. All right, so that was the beginning of the end for him. And after this, he just hates David and wants to kill him. In 1 Samuel 15, 14 through 19. And Samuel said, What meaneth then this bleating of the sheep in mine ears, and the lowing of the oxen which I hear? And Saul said, They have brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and of the oxen to sacrifice unto the Lord our God, and the rest we have utterly destroyed. Then Samuel said to Saul, Stay, and I will tell thee what the Lord has said to me this night. And he said unto him, Say on. And then Samuel came back and said, When thou wast little in thine own sight, wast thou not made the head of the tribes of Israel? And the Lord anointed thee king over Israel? And the Lord sent thee on a journey and said, Go, utterly destroy sinners, Amalekites, and fight against them until they be consumed. Wherefore then didst thou not obey the voice of the Lord, but didst fly upon the spoil, and this evil in the sight of the Lord? He was just saying, obedience is better than sacrifice, and rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. Now we're going to get to the sin of David. A hard judgment is brought upon him because he sins. There is none righteous. All have sinned and fell short of the glory of God, including David, including Moses, including me, including everybody. And that's the reason why I like the idea of being saved, because you believe, not because of what you did. Although what you did is going to count. But being saved is nothing that you did to be saved, except to believe Him. And confessing with your mouth is something, yes. If you confess with your mouth that He is your Lord, that is something. But it's only words. It's only words, but immediately those words, if you are going to be killed, immediately those words are going to be your salvation. Okay, so let's read this. 2 Samuel 24, 15 to 17. So the Lord sent a pestilence upon Israel from morning to time appointed. And there died of the people from Dan even to Beersheba 70,000 men. When the angel stretched out his hand upon Jerusalem to destroy it, the Lord repented him of this evil and said to the angel that destroyed the people, "It is enough. Stay now thine hand." So there it is. That's that heart of God again, where He's sorry. He was chastising His son, David. He loved his son. He was chastising. Original judgment was going to be 3 days of pestilence. And He only did 1 day, and already He was sorry He was doing so much against it. And because He's merciful and graceful, He loves us, and He only does things like chastise when He has to, because He loves us. Because He wants us to be like Him. He wants us like Him in His image. And He's still molding that image every day that we're alive, from the time we're born until the time we are with Him and with each other. Okay, the last piece of that. And the angel of the Lord was by the threshing place of Araunah the Jebusite. And David spake unto the Lord when he saw the angel that smote the people. And he said, Lo, I have sinned, I have done wickedly. But these sheep, what have they done? Let thine hand, I pray thee, be against me and against my father's house. Okay, now we have an exile of Samaria goes out. Samaria is the northern tribe kingdom, and they are sinning with idol worship. They're worshiping a cow. They're going to lose their identity. They're not going to have a priest. They're not going to have a prince. They're not going to have a king. They're not going to have an image to worship. They're not going to have a teraphim, which is a skull, which is a sinful doctrine. And they're not going to have a priest or an ephod. And they're going to completely lose their identity. That's why they're going to be called the 10 lost tribes of Israel. All right? And they're going to inhabit in Assyrian towns. Assyrian towns people are going to reside in Samaria and northern Israel places as well. So there's going to be a swap of people of the northern kingdom are going to be swapped with the people of Mede and Persia, and nobody's going to know that they're Israel anymore, and generations are going to pass, and they're going to stay like that, and they're going to find salvation through Jesus. Okay? It's going to be the great flock. So let's go to Jonah. Jonah expresses the what's happening with the lost tribes, and Nineveh is one of those places where they go. And Jonah chapter 1 verse 7 to 12. They said every one to his fellow, "Come, and let us cast lots, that we may know for whose cause this evil is upon us." Raging wind and about to sink the boat. So they cast lots. Notice that, "Come and let us cast lots, that we may know for whose cause this evil is upon us." So they cast lots, and the lot fell upon Jonah. Now notice the casting lots. That brings you right to Esther. "And then said they unto him, Tell us, we pray, whose cause is this evil upon us? What is thine occupation? Whence comest thou? What is thy country? And of what people art they?" And that's the questions that was going to be asked for all the people to see who's a Jew and who's not a Jew throughout all the provinces of the Mede and Persia area. All right? And they wanted to find out which one was Jewish. In this case, Jonah is Jewish. And he said unto them, "I am a Hebrew, and I fear God, the God of heaven, which had made the sea and the dry." Then were the men exceedingly afraid, and said unto him, "Why hast thou done this?" For the men knew that he fled from the presence of the Lord. Why? Because he told them. Then said they unto him, "What shall we do unto thee, that the sea may be calm unto us?" For the sea wrought and was very tempestuous. And Jonah says to them, "Take me up and cast me forth into the sea, so shall the sea be calm unto you. For I know that for my sake this great tempest is upon you." Verse 17, "The Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Chapter 2, verse 8 and 10, Jonah was saying, "They that observe lying vanities forsake their own mercy. But I will sacrifice unto thee with the voice of thanksgiving, says the Lord. I will pay that with what I have vowed. Salvation is of the Lord." And the Lord spake unto the fish, and vomited up Jonah upon the dry. Okay, let's continue with Jonah for Babylon now. "And Jonah began to enter into the city a day's journey, and he cried and said, Yet 40 days, and Nineveh shall be overthrown. So the people of Nineveh believed God and proclaimed a fast and put on sackcloth, from the greatest of them even to the least of them. For the word came unto the king of Nineveh, and he arose from his throne, and he laid his robe from him, and covered him with sackcloth, and he sat in ashes." Now Jesus has something to say about this repenting of the people in Nineveh. Matthew 12:41. "The men of Nineveh shall rise up in judgment against this generation." He's talking to Pharisees that don't believe him. "And shall condemn it, because they repented at the preaching of Jonah. And behold, a greater than Jonas is here." Okay, now there's a time of baptisms, both water, John the Baptist, and with Jesus, the Holy Spirit. Let's go to Luke 1, 8 through 10. "And it came to pass that while Zechariah executed the priest's office before God in the order of his course, according to the custom of the priest's office, his lot was to burn incense, and the whole multitude of the people were praying without at the time of incense." 11 to 17. "And there appeared unto Zechariah an angel of the Lord, standing on the right side of the altar of incense. When Zechariah saw him, he was troubled, and fear fell upon him. But the angel said unto him, Fear not, Zechariah, for thy prayer is heard, and thy wife Elizabeth shall bear thee a son, and shall call his name John. And thou shalt have joy and gladness, and many shall rejoice at his birth. And he shall be great in the sight of the Lord. And he shall drink neither wine nor strong drink. And he shall be filled with the Holy Ghost from his mother's womb. And many of the children of Israel shall he turn to the Lord their God. And he shall go before them in the spirit and power of Elijah. And let's go to Malachi for that. Malachi 4, verse 4 through 6. Remember ye the law of Moses, my servant, which I commanded him in Horeb, for all Israel, with statutes and judgment. Behold, I will send you Elijah, the prophet, before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. There's an ALEF and a TAV in that, behold, I will send Elijah. Leviticus 23, 11, 15, and 16. And he shall wave, the high priest, shall wave the sheaf before the Lord to be accepted for you. On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it, and you shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering. 7 Sabbaths shall be complete, even to the morrow after the 7th Sabbath shall ye number 50 days, and you shall offer a new meat offering unto the Lord. So you see, that's the beginning of the counting the days, and you get to 50, and you get to the day of Pentecost, and that's when the Spirit of God falls upon you. Acts 2, 15 through 20. Now Peter's talking here. He says, For these are not drunk as you suppose, seeing it is but the 3rd hour of the day, which is about 9 o'clock. But this is which was spoken by the prophet Joel, and it shall come to pass in the last days, says the Lord, says God, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. And on my servants and on my handmaidens I will pour out in those days of my spirit, and they shall prophesy. And I will show wonders in heaven above, and signs in the earth beneath, blood and fire and vapor of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness, the moon into blood, before the great and notable day of the Lord come. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. Okay, another thing is when Satan is kicked out of heaven. Revelation 12, 1 through 6. And there appeared a wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and with the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pained to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head. And his tail drew a 3rd part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to deliver her child as soon as that was born. And that was taking place when Herod slays the children of Bethlehem 2 years and under, because the wise men told them that that's where the Messiah was going to be born. And that was fulfilling that prophecy, that the dragon wants to devour her child as soon as it's born. Herod is the dragon at that point. And she brought forth a man-child. This is now the woman that has the 12 stars and has the moon under her feet, and the sun. She's clothed with the sun. She brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, And the child was caught up unto God and to his throne. Because right now he's seated unto God, next to him, seated at the right hand. And the woman fled in the wilderness, where she had a place prepared of her, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. That's the first half years. And that's for the two witnesses dressed in sackcloth, and that's also for the first 3.5 seals of the horses. Okay, verses 7 through 9 of 12. And there was war in heaven. Michael, who was as God, and his angels fought against the dragon. And the dragon fought against his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. So he gets kicked out of heaven. He used to be there when he walked up and down like he did in the days of Job. And now he's out, and he doesn't have much time left, and he knows that. Okay, this is the war in heaven. This is the mighty thing. This is where Jesus was sweating blood. This is when he was fighting that night. This was when he was praying. This was when everything was being heavy. This was his wrestle. This was his fight. And it was his fight against that strong angel, that strong enemy that he had, Satan. Yeah, he was a strong enemy. And this was a fight, and our side wins this. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan. So he's dragon, serpent, devil, and Satan. He's got 4 titles. The devil is the accuser. And the serpent is the deceiver, which deceives the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and the angels and his angels were cast out with him, and they were no longer allowed as in the days of Job. And I heard a loud, Revelation 12:10 and 12, and I heard a loud voice saying, Now is come salvation and strength, and the kingdom of our God, and in the power of his Messiah. For our accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accuses him before God day and night. So that was the devil now. The devil's the accuser, and he's always been accusing us and finding fault, and that's what he does. And the next verse, and they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto death. Therefore rejoice, you heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knows he has but a short time. Revelation 12:13-17. And when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child, and to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and a half a time, from the face of the serpent. And the serpent was cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened his mouth, and swallowed up the flood. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God, Moses, and have testimony of Messiah, Melchizedek. Revelation 13:1-4. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns. And upon each head a name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and his great authority. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? Verses 5 through 8. And it was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds, and tongues, and nations. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life, of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. In other words, it was in his will to be slain when he was slain from the beginning of the foundations of the world. 11 through 15, And I beheld another beast come up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. And he exercises all the power of the first beast that was before him, and he causes the earth and all them that dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he does great wonders, so that he makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceives them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles, which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image of the beast, which had the wound by the sword, and did live. 16 to 18. And he causes all, small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. And here is wisdom. Let him that has understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of the man, and his number is 666. 666 means he's a man that does not enter into 777, which is the rest of God. And if you can go into his rest simply by accepting his offer. So why darkness and men of darkness don't want to repent and don't want to accept his offer and enter into his rest? I don't know. But I did want to pass on the laws, in the laws of Moses, in the tablets, the 2 tablets, the 10 commandments, where the Lord's finger goes into it. There are 4 verses that contain alephs and tavs. There are 3 alephs and tavs in the 7th verse. That's the one that says, verse 7, Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. So the name itself is got an aleph and a tav. Once in the 7th verse, it has the name twice. Before the name of God, before his name, twice you have an aleph with a tav. It's mentioned, his name is mentioned twice in there. And keep it holy. And in verse 8, it's in remember the day of Sabbath, keep it holy. And 11, it's for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the 7th. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Okay, that's that whole idea of he worked 6 and worked 7. It's before the 7th. Okay, in the 11th verse, it's before the heavens, it's before the earth, and it's before the sea, and all that is in them is the next one. And then the 5th phrase has to do with he rested on the 7th. And then the 12th the 12th verse has to do with honoring mommy and daddy. That's to honor your father and your mother. Okay? Now, I brought that out because first of all, the 10 commandments are very, very dear to him. There was no ALEF and TAVs in the very first thing he says to us, but he pours his heart out. And God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven that I made, or that is on the earth, or that is in the water under the earth. Anything thou shalt not bow down thyself, nor serve them, for I am the Lord thy God, am a jealous God. Right there, he's telling you he gets jealous. He has a heart that has burning coals. He doesn't like it when we observe and act like we're high priests of these stones, of these statues, of these clay objects. It hurts him. What I said, I wanted to bring out the heart of God. It brought me to the laws, many times in Esther, brought me to the laws of the king. And this is where the laws of the king is. And I visit the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the 3rd and 4th generation of them that hate me. He calls it hating him. In other words, it's a wife that he has that goes against him, the Vashtis of a wife, not the Esters. And there's no writ of divorce. Do you see a writ of divorce in here? No, that came from Moses, for the hardness of their hearts. That was one of the blemishes of the law of Moses, as compared to the law of Melchizedek, who always lived, who is God, and is of the order of not a person, but of the order of God himself. He has no beginning nor end. And that is in the book of Esther, the chapters, and I was talking about that. I'd like to end with a little thing that caught my eye while I was making this. And that's that I noticed that right after I am the beginning and the end, I am the Alpha and Omega, I am the Aleph and the Tav, I am the first and the last. Right after that, he says, I am who is, who was, and who is to come. So in other words, who is, who was, who is to come is talking about someone that lives in everlasting eternity. And he that is the beginning and in the beginning and the end is he that lives in time. I just noticed that they go together when they talk. When he calls himself those two names. I thought that was interesting, and I have to say goodbye. And when I say goodbye, I want to give a blessing to those that heard this message. It's a lot of verses, and it's not me that writes the verses. All I do is read the verses, and I'd like to comment on them, but I have to save time, and so a lot of this was just reading the verses. That's life, right? It has its little bits of frustrations here and there. And that's why I want the Prince of Peace to come all over you and go from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet and bless you and keep you in his peace. The way Mordecai made sure his daughter and his niece was okay, that she was at peace. He stood at the gate and made sure that she was okay. Okay? I got that out of this too. That he loved his daughter, adopted daughter, and she must have been very pretty. Shalom, shalom.